Jakarta in the world. I'm Doug Johnson. This is White Trash Talking. And today I want to talk about the post-election results and what they mean and what they don't mean. And I'm dealing with people in my life that are suffering. You know, they're suffering because Donald Trump has been elected. They think it's the end of democracy, the end of the world maybe. And I have to agree, it's not a good thing that Donald Trump has been elected president, okay? But many people believe that it's better than if Kamala Harris had been elected, and I happen to fall in that camp. And I want to talk about why, and why it was necessary for the Democrats to lose. Okay, so in today's show, I'm going to bring you some clips from the show called The Gray Zone, and this is hosted by Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate, and they have on a couple of guests, Ali Abunimah, and then after that they have Jimmy Dore. And three of those four are top journalists, really. And they're rare. These kind of journalists are rare anymore. These are the kind that cover stories on the ground and have their ear to the ground. And Ali Abunimah is a Palestinian American, and he's one of the hosts of Electronic Intifada, which is, if you want to know about the events in Palestine, the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel, then that's a show to go to. There are a weekly show that I watch where they have all kinds of video clips of the resistance and so on, and they have on interesting guests, some of them from Gaza on their phone. I mean, it's very, very interesting. So, yeah, I'm going to show you some clips from them, and really what they're talking about is this election result being a repudiation of the Democratic Party, of Joe Biden, of Kamala Harris, of the party itself. And normally, you know, first of all, I want to say I am not a Democratic, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican. I have not believed in either party in many, many years because I see them as essentially the same. And I agree with Sheldon Wolin that the power that runs the country is an inverted totalitarian power, which means that it's run by a conglomerate of moneyed interest, including corporations, just the super wealthy, pharmaceuticals, just what we refer to as the elite. And they have bought and paid for every aspect of democracy in the U.S. And that includes the presidency, Congress, the judiciary, penal system, the media, and the electoral system. These have been captured by their money. And while we think and act like we live in a democracy in the U.S., the truth is people have very little say. And this is why policies don't change much between the two major parties. Whether Trump is in there or whether Harris is in there, they're not really running the show. They do make a difference, and I think what they call the deep state is trying to stop Trump because he does have an independent mind. I think he's harder for them to control. But he's not going to get much done, and certainly the policies that Americans are worried about, I don't think he'll make much headway on that. There's generally not much change between the two parties as we go along. Any meaningful change that's beneficial to the people, forget it. Okay, so yeah, I want to show the first clip, and this is Ali Abunimah talking about what this loss by the Democratic Party means. And I'll just let you listen to it.
I don't know if they don't understand the scale of the horror that they are responsible for, and or just that maybe they're so sociopathic that they can't understand how, they lack empathy to understand that people, as John Mearsheimer said, genocide is a red line for me. He won't vote for them. And so what about if your family are being murdered by bombs airlifted 24/7, baby buster bombs airlifted 24/7 by the Democratic Party? Because that's what it is. The Democratic Party is in the White House, and Joe Biden can pick up the phone. He could have done this any time in the last year to Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, and say, stop the airlift of bombs. And that's the one thing they will not do. They refuse to do. Yes, they made some sort of token, we delayed a shipment here or there, but they never really stopped the flow of weapons in any meaningful way. And they have refused also the Kamala Harris, Joe Biden State Department deliberately covered up. They falsified a government report that in which State Department experts had concluded that Israel was deliberately preventing humanitarian aid from reaching Palestinians. And that report would have triggered provisions in US law that make it illegal to transfer weapons to Israel. But they were so committed to this genocide that they falsified the report. There was another report in the Washington Post a few days ago about how the government has something like 500 instances of Israel using American weapons to commit atrocities, and they're just refusing to investigate them as they're required to do. Those are the lengths Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have gone to ensure that the rate of baby slaughter does not diminish in Gaza.
Yeah, this has been a traumatic year for the world to watch these images on our phones. Even when you really don't want to see them, they're flashing across your feed constantly. And I worry that genocide will become normalized. And I think with the young people, it's just a part of their day. Oh, okay, there's a cat video, there's someone dancing or singing. Oh, here's a dead baby with his head ripped off. Oh, okay, next. And this is horrible. And I didn't grow up with this. I'd never seen a genocide in my entire life. They happened, yeah, but now we're faced with it, and the ones causing it are the Democratic Party. I'm not saying the Republicans aren't complicit. Of course they are. But the ones who have the direct power to stop it are the Democrats, and they're not doing it. And as Ali said, this is a red line. I'm sorry, I can't vote for a mass murderer. Now, Trump did kill the leader, the military general in Iran. He killed him in Iraq, and another general that was with him. And that's terrible. That's murder. And Trump has done some horrible things, but nothing comes close to this. And I started by saying the two parties are really no different, but this is a time when, when you're talking genocide, that's different. Okay, let's hear what else Ali has to say.
You said, I want her to lose. I believe that genocide is a red line. I mean, there's nothing worse than this. And so to me, it's depraved, it's perverted to say, oh, well, yeah, there's genocide, but what about this? There's no what about when it comes to genocide. And if they get away with this, then what can't they get away with? What's next? Of course, I think the appropriate way to hold them accountable is through a swift and speedy trial and harsh punishment befitting those who are guilty of genocide. Of course, I'm advocating for that to be a fully orderly legal process to bring these genocidal criminals to justice.
Okay, and that's not going to happen. And the reason is the U.S. is still very powerful, and they don't consent to other law enforcement agencies coming in and taking away the former president or vice president or spokesman or whatever, the ones that are responsible for this genocide. Like we did after World War II, because we were the victors, and we were able to go in and arrest the killers and try them on the spot and execute them and so on. That's not going to happen in this case. So let's hear what else Ali has to say.
In the absence of any kind of real legal system, real justice system, the only form of accountability we have is this election, which is not great, but it's the only form of accountability. And what is so frustrating, I'm clearly not a fan of Donald Trump. I don't have any illusions about Donald Trump. But if we look at objective reality, there is nothing Donald Trump did in 4 years. He did terrible things during those 4 years. Like every president does terrible things. I mean, it was Noam Chomsky who said that if the Nuremberg principles were applied, every president would be, guilty of war crimes at Nuremberg. No question about it. And that's true of Donald Trump. But if we have to compare, nothing Donald Trump did comes even close to either what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done and are doing, or what George W. Bush and Dick Cheney did in their illegal aggression, their invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, and their so-called war on terror, the murder, the torture, the black sites. I understand there's a whole generation that has grown up without the direct knowledge and memory of these things. And they're watching now the liberal media whitewash George W. Bush into this cuddly teddy bear figure. But more crucially, Dick Cheney, who was the real mastermind of these atrocities, is fully on board with Kamala Harris. So we really should be calling it the Harris-Cheney ticket, the Harris-Cheney campaign.
Yeah. There was a time before Bill Clinton when the Democratic Party represented the interests of the American people much better. They advocated for the working class, represented the unions, and they didn't accept large donations from corporations. There's a law that prevents that, and they abided by that law. And Bill Clinton changed that. And he would argue that the Democratic Party needed to keep up with the Republican Party to run campaigns. They were being out-campaigned because they didn't have the finances. But there was a time when the two parties were very different. Now the Democratic Party is the war party. And like Ali said, Dick Cheney, the architect of the Republicans' war in Iraq, is now in bed with Kamala Harris. How are the two parties different? And how can you vote for a party that Dick Cheney is siding with? Yeah, Dick Cheney is saying that Kamala Harris represents his interests better than Donald Trump. That's scary. All right, let me move on.
You get all these people saying, oh, but Trump will be even worse. And the question is, how will Trump be worse? I mean, it's possible Trump will be just as bad, that's likely. But to say it will be worse is, first of all, to diminish the scale of the Holocaust that has been ongoing for a year. And it's to suggest that the Biden-Harris administration has somehow held back in their support for Israel. And they haven't. They've given Israel everything. I think they've even surprised Israel by not restraining Israel. I think Israel is like sometimes their exit strategy from the quagmires they get themselves into is for the Americans to pull the plug on it. That's what happened when Israel was defeated in Lebanon in 2006. That's what happened with other Israeli massacres in Gaza. The Americans eventually pulled the plug and said enough. And so the Israelis could say, oh, well, we were going to finish the job, but the US told us enough is enough. I think they've been surprised that the Biden administration is like, keep going. We'll do whatever we want. We'll lie that, we'll lie about humanitarian aid. We'll cover up the atrocities. We'll keep sending the bombs. We'll give you we'll bless every single thing you do. So unless you think Trump has magic powers, the United States is always already helping Israel to the limit of its abilities. Short of dropping atomic bombs on Gaza, which, there are certainly Israeli politicians who've said we'll do that, but actually Trump is the only one speaking out about the risk of nuclear war, ironically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Trump fan, and I think that his policies in Gaza and the West Bank and Israel will be terrible. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, plans to build condos in Gaza. And I mean, it's the plans that are in the works are horrifying. But Trump did not commit genocide. And for the most part, he has an aversion to war, something that I happen to agree with. He tries to avoid war and create dialogue with countries that otherwise are considered enemies. Why they're considered enemies, I don't know. I mean, I do know, but they're not legitimately enemies, like Putin or so on. But to me, it's like the Democratic Party tried to lose. They supported a genocide in the face of severe backlash. It was so unpopular, and they must know this, yet they don't care, and they just pushed ahead. Well, now you reap what you sow. That's it. You're done. Okay. Now I want to hear Max Blumenthal talk a little bit further about the repudiation of the Democratic Party and the repudiation of other aspects other than war. So let's listen.
The national security state clearly favored Kamala. And that's, 700 former members of the CIA, DOD, the three-letter agencies openly endorsing her, the presence of the Cheneys. I mean, it was all very clear who they wanted for president. And so this is a repudiation of the quote-unquote deep state and the role that they've played in American foreign policy, something that unfortunately Americans will continue to have very little influence over. It's a repudiation of corporate media. Fox News dropping Tucker Carlson means that they sacrificed their most populist pro-Trump voice, one of the more anti-war figures within the Trump camp. And Fox News began to resemble more a standard kind of center-right network. So it's a repudiation of corporate media. It is a repudiation of resistance liberalism. This model has completely failed. Resistance liberalism believes in converging with the center-right, the Bush Republicans, and the national security state, having no principles, being Machiavellian, and doing whatever it takes to delegitimize Trump. It completely backfired, I think. The Democrats should have been more progressive. It's a repudiation of what the Democratic Party is by draping its support for neoliberalism and war in woke politics. In which just the average people are sick of it. Whatever you think of it, they want something that just speaks to everyone. I can just feel it when I go out there. So it's a total repudiation, if Donald Trump wins, of the full panoply of the establishment. But
yeah, I don't live in the U.S. I live in Jakarta, but I'm you deal with the wokeism online, which I'm faced with, but it's not the same as living in a culture inside of the wokeism. So, and I talked to my brother, and he sounded like Max Blumenthal, just sick of it, and kind of relieved, perhaps. Yeah, it seems like a very unhealthy society now that's drifting further and further away from the values that the people really deep down embrace, and the things that they want are slipping further away. And it's because they're not in control of their own lives. It's not a democracy anymore. It's not. If the democratic processes have been captured, as I said, by money, then, I mean, even these candidates come from money. Yeah, the Democratic candidate didn't even face a vote. She was just put in there. So this is, anyway, the people are not being represented. They're very, very unhappy. They're living a lifestyle that is increasingly unhealthy. And they want to take back their government and take back control of their lives. That's the sense I get. And that's why they didn't vote for the Democratic Party. Okay, let's listen further.
The contempt for neoliberal elites because of their condescending attitude toward most people, their refusal to talk about issues that impact people's lives, their embrace of all these obsessions that wasted everyone's time and made the world more dangerous, like Russiagate. I mean, there is widespread dissatisfaction with that. And I think Kamala Harris, just like Hillary Clinton in 2016, is paying the price tonight for, just being in lockstep with neocons and neoliberals and not offering enough people much in the way that speaks to their daily lives and their real issues. And maybe Democrats will learn a lesson. They certainly didn't learn a lesson in 2016 from Hillary Clinton's loss. They even went more to the right. So maybe this time, if this result as it currently looks holds, things will be different.
They're not going to learn a lesson. They're incapable of learning. They're incapable of listening to the people, taking feedback, making adjustments. They're on autopilot. It's a corporate mindset is what it is. They're just seeking the maximum degree of power, the maximum degree of money. The people now have become fodder for this rapacious government. And if that sounds too strong, well, that's my opinion. That's what it looks like to me. Okay, so what I want to listen to Jimmy Dore now. He's a comedian. If you haven't ever watched him, he's mixes politics and humor, and he's very knowledgeable as well. This is Jimmy Dore.
I've gotten into discussions with people who I've asked, you consider yourself a liberal. How do you not stand with the people of Palestine? How do you not have a red line? And they would, to a person, would come back to me, well, Donald Trump is going to go door to door and kick out immigrants from our country. And then they would say that Donald Trump is anti-trans and Donald Trump is anti-abortion. And I was like, so you're telling me you're really prioritizing immigration status for migrants, you're prioritizing abortion access and trans rights over the literal slaughter of women and children, of the most vulnerable people in the world in Palestine. So that sounds to me very self-centered, and that sounds like that what the liberals who voted against Donald Trump, what they're really doing was voting to ease their own mind so they didn't have to see Donald Trump every day, and they don't care if somebody. There's no red. If you can't vote against, as Shama Sawan has said, you got to make them pay a price for funding a genocide, and I agree with that 100%. And if you can't do that, then there is no red line, and that's what 40 years of voting for the lesser of two evil has gotten you. It's gotten you now that you actually literally are propping up and trying to get elected a person committing a genocide and committed to continuing a genocide.
Yeah, this policy every 4 years of choosing the lesser of two evils has led to this. And I've been screaming about this for years, that when you have two evils and you're choosing the lesser of the two, you end up with evil. It's two evils, and you're choosing one of them. Well, here you go. Here you go. This is what's happening. And it's becoming more extreme. Okay? So something's got to change in that regard. And like, true democracy where the people pick their candidate, the one that they want that represents them, not one that's given to them by a corporate elite who's looking for someone to represent their powers. So they buy a candidate. That's how it works. So, and this idea also of the Democrats, the ones that are grieving now, well, they're prioritizing important things. I mean, I must say, like abortion rights and taxes and immigration policy, people coming across the border. There's good and bad ways to deal with these issues, and we need to have a civil discussion about them and put pressure on the government to do the right things about them. But this idea that this outweighs mass murder, no, we need to stop the mass murder first. We don't have the right to kill people in other countries. And we are killing them. We, the United States, are killing them. If you think we're not, you live in a bubble. Yes, Israelis are doing it, but they're getting their arms from the U.S. They're getting their support, a lot of support from the U.S., including political cover and media cover in the U.S. and in Israel. And we perpetuate it. We make it possible. We are killing tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. And that takes precedent over the discussion about these other things that are important. But we have to make that first. And that's got to stop today. Let's stop that today, the killing. And then let's talk about these important issues. You can't just gloss over genocide. You can't do it. Sorry. Democrats have to go because they won't stop. Okay, sorry about that rant, but come on, people. All right, that's my show today. All right, so like I said, I'll be doing this once a week, and I appreciate your support. If you like this, give it a like, please. Subscribe. I need more subscribers. I'm not interested in becoming famous. I'm not going to become famous. I'm pretty clear about that. But I would like to reach more people. So please subscribe and like, and that'll make me happy. Make this old man happy, okay? All right, that's it. I'm White Trash Talking. I'm Doug Johnson. I'll see you next week. Bye.